Happy Monday. Welcome back to Retake the Week. We've got another episode about, well, technically not that big of an event. This is what's been weird about the last sort of month. We haven't really seen the big teams play. The play-in of Pro League is what's going on, and it's a lot of Tier 2, a lot of international teams. Not a lot of big names, but still a lot of fascinating storylines, details to get into. And of course, our usual segments coming up later. Before we get into all that, before I even talk to this guy who just happens to be here, let's also do the thanking of the members. Members get access to a number of different bits of content. I'm trying to add more of the King's Court interviews, reaching out to people as we speak to try and get some of that arranged. Yeah, also access to BTS, prospect demos, certain videos early as well. I believe the last episode of the Double Swing was out for members about a day in advance, or maybe 12 hours. I can't remember how long in advance, but it was in advance for members. Members also get access to the Q&A, which will be happening today. Not that all of them exercise that right. We only have one question this week. But no, it's a lot of things for a relatively cheap price. Quacke, firstly, good morning. Hope you're doing well. Anything to promote?
Good morning. Yeah, I put out a thing this weekend. It's an article about chess. It's one of the first times I'm writing about an esport which isn't Counter-Strike. Because I didn't know. That's the point of it. Chess is now an esport. Yeah, that's the point of the article. I basically just I try to figure out why the fuck are all of the big chess players now signing for esports orgs, and the answer, it's actually kind of interesting because it's a pretty unique situation. With exactly why. I don't think we've ever had anything similar happen before in esports. So yeah, go check that out. It's at Esport Media. You can find it on my Twitter. It's in Swedish, but translate it, and it's going to be fine.
Very nice. Yeah. Chess only recently an esport, isn't it? It's been a game for a while. It's been a fun way to exercise intellectual dominance over inferiors, but now, officially an electronic sport. Here we are.
Yep.
What a weird time. We begin with the Q&A because, well, we might as well do it. There's one question. It's an interesting question. It comes from Fat Koala 8646. First off, great name. Feels like sort of thing you'd be given automatically, but you know that there's no system out here calling people fat, so that's a self-made but very fun name. Any Tier 2/3 IGL/teams you've been impressed by tactically this year? And I do have one answer that's, I think, very obvious, and one that just deserves some credit, even if I don't have as specific a breakdown on why. And obviously the obvious one for me is Parry Vision. Now, they have reunited Jame with Kickert and Dastan. Now, we know, of course, it's not actually Jame calling. Everyone keeps saying it on broadcast, everywhere else. It doesn't really matter, though, because they are playing that system, developed by, iconically used by Jame over the course of about a half-decade, in order to make multiple major finals with dogshit pieces. And in this instance, it's actually with strong pieces, which is interesting, because he actually has some really strong riflers compared to the actual level he's at. Nota, Belchinok, really strong riflers. But they're still playing a similar style, and I still see a lot of that old-school VP approach, where you do have very heavy stacks in terms of taking big, strong map control with a lot of players, then doing late rotations based off one lurker, finding a little gap, a little space, a little timing. This willingness to play very spread, very slow defaults as well. It's a very different style than we're used to seeing, but it's uniquely them, and it's reoccurring. And so despite it being not particularly fun for everyone, I'm not going to deny otherwise, it is, for me, as a... saying student of the game seems a bit wanky, but as an enjoyer of tactical Counter-Strike at times, I do enjoy watching their games, and it is fun to see a player like Nota, who I thought was being completely wasted on that AmCal roster, because, let's be real, they don't play good CS at all. It's fun to see him play on a team where he has a good chance to really make the most of his talent and his opportunity. So, big fan of that team for now. Honestly, one of the best examples of a Tier 2 team that's just immediately got rolling, dominating, playing a very different style. They have started to hit some struggles more recently as their style gets read, as people get used to it, because you do play a lot of the same people over and over again, so it does eventually kind of get found out. But no, they've been strong. Last 3 months, 72% win rate. James been having a ball. He's been fragging out. But also the calling and the system has been really strong, and that's the key to this. Quacke, any counterexamples? Do you have anyone else in mind?
If you look upwards a bit, I don't know if we can really call them tier 2 teams, but they were quite recently tier 2 teams, so it's a borderline pick. 3D Max and Wildcard, I think, are very good. Yeah, maybe 3 months ago they would have been. Yeah, but I think no, it's hard to pick anybody else because I think a lot of the teams below look so. I think maybe Navi Junior is a shout.
That's a pretty good one because with Crabbenny leading, he's the fragging IGL kind of that team, but they do use them. They use the players pretty well. They've got good ideas of how to approach rounds. You know, with Makaze taking openings and Crabbenny playing off them, but then playing off of Crabbenny will often be like Jugs and Demon. But then there's ways that other players get activated later with their lurks, with the layers there are to their game, because you see it quite often being a very like punch counter punch type team. Like the punch is Makaze quite often. That was something that was brought up a lot in Prospects Makaze. Like he is going to be the initial punch, but then there's this option where like Crabbenny works the other side of it. Like sure, he's set his player up, but he's also got this idea of how to use the other extremity, how to potentially push a little gap. It's why their Ancient was quite fun, I think. They used it quite well on that map, as well as a few others that are more T-sided. But no, Navi Junior's a good shout. That's a good shout.
Yeah, maybe more so than the Spirit. Maybe
Spirit Academy is interesting because they feel more reliant on Kyosuke if all you know is the noise surrounding them, which is just Kyosuke. And I'm not denying his talent. He is insanely good. Like if you watch him, basically very simply, watch him have a crosshair somewhere, a player appears, the crosshair moves. He does that outstandingly. His pre-aims are also tidy and everything like that, but the crosshair adjustment onto the player is what's usually very impressive with a Kyosuke double kill, for example.
Yeah.
But they do have other players that are interesting rather than necessarily a whole system that's interesting. Like Alcaren's actually proven himself to be an outstanding AWPer, and when they went to LAN, he was potentially their best player. Like in a lot of series, he was better than Kyosuke on LAN. And Mokujin also is a player who has little moments, little flashes of brilliance. Like he just makes that sort of support player clutch play where you're like, oh, he added that extra value, you know?
Yeah.
He's an interesting player for me as well, but I don't think systematically they're that interesting, but they do get a lot out of more players than we typically give them credit for. And that's kind of my point with them. I do have another example of an IGL specifically, and that is Celta. I think Gun 5, they lost Tanir, and I thought, given the players they had left and who they signed technically to replace him, they brought in Lackey to replace him, and it's between Lackey and Steim that they've really got to look for the impact that he left behind, because he was more of the lurker, a late round closer for them, occasionally trading over the shoulder of Ziello, but primarily just doing that lurking and late round closing. They didn't really have star pieces come in, but what they've done is really lent into, like adjusted and really lent into Ziello's openings. They're not getting as much late round. I mean, they have had a few pop-offs from Lackey that have helped, but I think it's really impressive that Celta, this young IGL, not even a fragging IGL by any means, he's not a brilliantly impactful player, but as a caller has kept it together, and they've ended up in this situation where they are still winning games at a fair lick, considering they lost a really impactful rifler, and a rifler who's moved into tier 1 and is dropping like a 1.15. Like, that's a really strong rifle player. They're still surviving and thriving without him. I think a lot of credit has to go towards Celta as the IGL. I mean, the veteran pieces have come in, the coaching, all of that factors. But for himself, I think he's done a good job. He's putting on a bit of a display. Like, hey, if you need an IGL, speaks Russian. I've shown I can handle a lot. Been through a lot, can handle a lot.
There's a couple of teams who could use him at this point. Couple of Russian teams who, at least in the off season we were talking about, they could really use an IGL. They could use a Russian-speaking IGL. Didn't go for him, but no, it wasn't definitely clear,
to be honest. Like
but next time we have a shuffle, VP with Electronic, how long is that gonna last? There's a couple of teams who maybe in Amiga want a leadership change. Aurora as well, Celter's definitely going to be on the table.
Yeah, VP replacing Electronic with Celta would be a move.
Well,
That'd be a move. Holy crap. That's a big old risk.
Replacing him as IGL with Celter, they don't necessarily have. It doesn't necessarily have to be him being cut.
I see what you mean, but still,
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But no, I get what you mean. If there's another Russian shuffle, obviously
history is a flat circle. It's going to happen.
There are bigger names than Celta in the Russian-speaking scene, and bigger teams and orgs that fill up the gaps between Gun 5 and VP. So we'll see if that's necessary. But no, I think that's kind of the teams that have impressed me. I mean, obviously, the problem is a lot of teams who would be available for this sort of conversation, like your 3D Maxes, like the ones you mentioned, essentially, like Wildcards, have nicely jumped into the now almost official Tier 1.5 void, that we kind of created with the VRS shift, where there's just this group of teams that usually we don't really see at Tier 1 events unless they can win an open quali, a close quali, or who have to prove themselves over months and months and months and months, but still end up playing a lot of Tier 2 CS. They now just get consistent Tier 1.5, essentially, invites. Like, we know these invites are for that tier of play, and they've locked them down by having a few nice upset wins and just being a repeated presence. So, no, some of those best, like, unique teams have basically escaped the Tier 2, Tier 3 wasteland, I guess I could say.
Mm. Yeah.
I'm just doing my due diligence. I'm going to have a quick scan of anyone. I mean, baits are always interesting, just because they are NPL-led and NPL-driven in terms of the rifle play, but they've added another facet in Kensizor where they have extra firepower, another tool to use in the war chest, a player who's willing to be ultra-aggressive and, honestly, in a lot of cases, sacrificial, but ultra-impactful in the process because he just hits a lot of really hard shots and is a pain in the ass to deal with if you're on the other team, just because his movement mechanics and his playmaking just over and over again gets things done. So I think they're a team who deserve credit.
I think, per definition, Imperial Valkyries would fit the question. It's just that if you've actually seen them in Impact, you wouldn't be that impressed by their tactics, because they have good tactics there as well. But in their series against Na'Vi and Furia, tactically, they look pretty good.
I mean, against Furia, they played outright almost better CS on Mirage.
Yeah.
Like, it was...
So a lot of people probably were impressed by them tactically. So per definition, they could probably fit here. But it's not... Yeah. It's not a huge outlier because they do that in Impact League as well.
Yeah, for us in Impact League, we know they have had like some of the strongest setups, strongest team play. They have the best cohesion, I think, is essentially where we are. And they have had for a long time, between the core, especially of Cat, formerly Vilga, 23, and Tori. There's just been that rifle core that's just been so solid. And over again, using better util, just knowing how to play off each other. It's been a fixture, really, if that's...
Yeah. I'm just, as a question, I don't watch this team a lot, so I'm not sure. But results-wise, I feel like Copenhagen and Wolves are doing a lot more with a lot less, considering the players they have. Do you have an opinion on them? Because they're...
With a lot less...
I mean, I don't think they have the players to end up in CCT playoffs and wherever they end up.
So they have...
I don't know, Tupperware is calling, so... He's well regarded,
and he's been a cool fixture for a while. But ever since they signed Andu, they've just been slowly getting better. And like, sure, they have made a couple other moves. Notably, signing Bielani was an interesting one. I mean, since they signed Andu, what have they changed? Magilla and Era was the key double switch, for Jaquinho and Bielani, and I still think a lot of it comes down to, like, because Andu, he does this sort of like high aggression style, and recently it's been a lot of just opening fights that then just he dies. That's why I didn't pick him as my prospect of the week, because he's just been, sure, his openings are high and his KPR's high, but his DPR's high because these openings are not that productive. Like, if you check in the last week or so, the win rate after the opening is low. His death rate is skyrocketing. Like, it's just not been that crazy. But the team is still able to find success because they've got this depth, I think, of mid-rounding. When they add Jaquinho, who's come off the IGL role full-time, they've been able to adjust and win in mid to late rounds a lot more than they used to. Because they used to be a team who lived off of, prior to the Magilla version, it was Fessor and Shane as their like rifle duo who are supposed to just crack things open. And if they weren't cracking things open between the two of them, there was very little else going on. And this version feels more fluid in terms of how they approach a round. I still think there's limits to this team. I'm not sure where they can go, but as far as the team that's impressed me for what it has, I think that's fair. I think it's fair to say Copenhagen Wolves are a decent shout for this.
Yep.
All right. Should we talk about this Pro League play-in?
Hell yeah.
We have to start with, well, what the title talks about. Tyloo. So the title of the stream is Jesus is Risen. For those of you wondering, this is not a sermon. We're not about to start preaching and talking about the smiting and coming down and all that other nonsense.
Me Lord.
Yeah, no, we're not going to go full Baptist today. Not that we ever would, I'm hoping. The first team to have gone 2-0, at least in our rundown of the order on our show notes. This Tyloo result is just wild. Like, on the retake the week, on Double Swing, I picked a Chinese team. I picked Lin Vision, because they've been playing better than Tyloo in domestic play, like they've been winning more. They had, in my eyes, the more talented players. Well, not necessarily all more talented players, but they had talents I believed in more, in players like Starry, Zaka. I really like those guys. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take a risk on them. Maybe they can figure something out. It will be chaotic, it won't be pretty, but they might be able to get a few upset wins. And in the end, Tyloo end up completely flipping the narrative, like just destroying a pair of teams. And my takeaway so far is essentially this is more of a display of character and will, almost, than it actually is really any particular grand strategy, from what I've been able to determine. They're playing really well off each other. They're going for a lot of plays that aren't necessarily improvised, but that are just well set up, well coordinated, rather than necessarily pre-planned. So they do have a ridiculously high flash assist rate right now. Jam Young's putting up insane numbers. And honestly, it's great to watch. It's fun. But I have an inkling, a feeling that it's could just run out and they could go 2-3. If they don't go 3-0, I think they go 2-3. For a couple of statistical reasons. The first one being, Jam Young is taking 40% of their opening attempts. He's winning on like 80%. Like, he's got a 0.32 opening kill per round stat. Like, he's just winning opening fights over and over and over and over again. And he then also, on top of it, is winning a ridiculous number of clutches. And that's kind of the point. They're going for a lot of high-risk, high-leverage plays, believing in themselves. That's why I'm saying it's more of a display of character than anything else. And then also executing very, very strongly. But they're hitting ridiculous shots. They're winning improbable clutches. They're making things happen. And it's fun. And that's why we see G get super excited and G screaming at everyone. And their clutch numbers are ridiculous. But overall, I don't think it's necessarily a guarantee that this is just how Tyloo can win series. I think they are going to get, not necessarily countered, but just they're going to run into a team that also are going to hit a few shots, going to require them to do something better than win a clutch through like a 1v3 or some of the luckier 1v2s. Their opponent's going to be as sharp, going to have as good a day, and I think this is going to fall short. So I think they are either 3-0 today or 2-3 by the end of this play-in.
Yeah, that's a pretty good shot. I haven't seen them too much. I think, yeah, I didn't think it was a series worth watching. But it turns out the Eternal Fire series definitely was. It's nice that Tyloo gets a break, because we've been talking about Tyloo for, at least I've been thinking about Tyloo for a long time. They've made these quite grand moves to try to make something or other happen to get back to the top of Asian CS. They've made quite big moves, like they've basically picked apart some of the best players in the region from other teams to make this happen. It started out with Rare Atom when they picked up Mercury, Moseu, and Jam Young. Then they picked up G from Lin Vision, and they also picked up, at that time, they also picked up, what's his name? Starry was there as well. He went back to Lin Vision. And I thought this was like, when Starry went back to Lin Vision, in what can only be described as a managerial failure of some kind, I thought we were over. I thought Tyloo was over. But yeah, no, it turns out they're still a very good team, at least so far. But it does sort of feel like, yeah, maybe this is 2-3. I don't know. At a major, I would have definitely said they're going 2-3. I would not have changed.
Right, yeah, the caliber of opposition, you don't need the full hot streak that Jamyoung's on. You just need a version of it. Because Mosea's still been pretty good, actually. Like, I know a lot of rounds just stick in my head where Mosea's hit a few good shots and it's really opening things up. G's had some clutch moments, some, and not necessarily like 1vx clutch moments, but like late round, they're down a man, or they need something turned around, and G's hit some critical shots. And it's that kind of thing where it's like, how much of that do they need? Because they've won 2-0, 2-0. Maybe if they don't have quite as much of it, they can win a 2-1 game. But look, they're playing today. Who was it? I had the list up. They're playing GamerLegit, who I think are a much stronger team.
Yeah.
To be clear. And I think that's going to just be the end of it. Like, I think they lose to GamerLegit here today. Like, that's where it starts. And for me, they probably run out of momentum, end up going 2-1. 2-3. But there's always the chance. Like, if this heater stays up, if they keep winning clutches, Jamyon keeps winning every opening duel, yeah, why not? Why not 3-0?
Yeah.
Even against a team I think are, more tactically well-rounded, got a better, like, overall composition in terms of different roles, and a caller that I have more respect for in terms of what he's done recently, because Tyloo have not been pretty as far as the Counter-Strike played domestically. So they should fall short here. They should. That's all I'm going to say. They should have fallen short against Eternal Fire in theory. But Eternal Fire, their flaw's their flaw. Maybe it's just been a matchup thing. Maybe they've just had the luck of the matchups.
I have one thing though. If this was a major, this 2-0 result would have been in best of ones. And that's why I think in a major they would definitely have gone.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I'm not super sure. Because, it really depends on matchups as well. It's very difficult to predict these matchups because they're using an ELO engine to make it work. It's not, it's basically the old major Swiss system rather than Buchholz. So it's quite hard to know how it works. We'll see what happens. It's up the loo.
Up the loo.
Up the loo.
I can't help but everyone like, we love Tyloo. Tyloo's awesome. Like, there is a basketball coach called Tyloo, and it just always rings weird to me. Because he was always in the headlines for being trash.
Yep.
So it's just a weird thing to hear. But yeah, let's move on to another team who no one had going 2-0. Let's be real. No one thought this team could go 2-0 straight out the bat, straight off the bat. And that's Saw. Because we thought they're going to need some time. With this new roster, and they're winning close-ish games. Like, they're basically a bit of an opposite to Tyloo, where Tyloo have won like 60% of their rounds, Saw have won 50%. They're really just squeaking by, winning BO3s in 3 maps. And when you look at the maps they win, you're wondering why everyone's stats are kind of mid overall. In the maps they win, it's by committee. It's pretty much entirely by committee. Like, everyone's got like 16 to 20 kills, and everything's just kind of worked out. And it's basically they've been winning the key rounds in the right moments, And they're doing it off of, honestly, it's Muteris's calling feels like it's got a lot to do with these wins again. It's a credit to him that a lot of us did say that one of the things that works for Saw is they do have a strong caller, especially relative to their level, but overall a strong caller. They've added a couple players who might frag a little harder. Hasn't really been the case. Like, Aguilar's been their number 1 rated player. Story's had a few good fragging maps. But all in all, it's just fragging by committee and a solid game plan and approach, which I think is commendable. But I feel like they're another team who are going to need something else to work for them to actually go through. I've got a weird feeling about them also potentially being a 2-3 team. And I don't know how the matchups are going to work out because I don't really track all that stuff. But today they have to get through M80. We'll see how that goes. They might have the edge on the calling, maybe. But I don't know. M80 have been on a heater as well.
Yep.
But it's cool to see Saw winning. It's just a bit weird the way they're doing it and the players they're doing it with. It's just a bit weird to watch. I'm just not sure how to feel about it beyond what I've put forth. I don't think they have that great of fragging backing up the nice calling and everything. And I feel like they're going to just run to a brick wall of someone's going to shoot you in the head a bit harder.
Yeah. I'm not sure what to think about. So I thought, the first game, I can write that off as an upset. We're going to talk a bit about Heroic, but like it's a realistic win. And then I take Furia, and it's still not. I am surprised, but it's also Furia. Furia, I will say every time, Furia can lose to literally anybody. There's nobody who Furia can consistently beat.
Any 5 Europeans, they can lose.
Yes, absolutely. So this is fine. I'm kind of interested in the fact that Azubu and Sedjot are the players not really doing too hot. Like they're winning, they're 2-0, and they have their 2 new signings are 0.90 and 0.89.
Yeah,
and they have
rating,
Story
yes.
0.92. Yeah.
I saw that, so I went through the maps they've won, because they've won 4 maps, and it's literally every map they've won, everyone's in the green. Everyone's in the green, but barely. Everyone's like at a 1.11, a 1.10.
Oh, the only map they've lost is Dust 2.
They've lost Dust 2 twice, and every time they've lost it they lost it incredibly hard to Furia, and that's caused their ratings to just tank. That's the problem. It's the one loss each series has been dreadful, but the wins have been fine. Like if you look at Zulu's ratings, like he has 1 sub 1.0 map in a win, and that's a 0.96, but then a dreadful Dust 2 versus Furia, a 0.33 rated Dust 2 versus Furia, and that just tanks his entire rating down to a 0.9.
Yeah.
He's been more of a 1.0 rated player, 1.06, if I had to put a stat to the fucking performance. I don't think he's been outstanding. I think he's been fine. It's just that one map has just ruined everything for all of them.
Excluding Dust 2 is 0.98 average, Sedjot is 0.101, but Mutavis goes up to 110 and Ahil to 116. So it's
still Ahil, it's still Story doing a lot of work as we expected.
Ahil's doing more than I expected.
But Sedjot and Azuru are getting slightly hard done by the overall stat lines, I think.
Yeah.
What the hell is missing? Oh, Train is the other one.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sedjot's had a pretty strong run if you actually ignore the Dust 2. He's actually been quite impactful.
Yeah, pretty good. I wonder, I'm curious about, because that could have saved Saw. This could have been the saving grace, which put Saw back in the Austin Major, for example. This move at this time. And let's go, my goat Golden. If there's any, he can right the ship.
He was one of the people under duress, like one of the names thrown out that was like, if this is supposed to work, Golden is supposed to be XYZ. He needs to be as good a coach as we hope he is, or basically needs to transfer some of that cred from his IGL days that some of us rate, in terms of actual calling, but that was a while ago, into this coaching. And look, the team's played well. How much of it's him? How much of it's Mutaris? Because Mutaris has called a strong game for years now. Not really sure.
Yep.
But look, I think they've done a pretty outstanding job of just winning the right rounds. I'm just dubious that they can actually convert and go much further. They're another team who you go 3-0 or I stop believing entirely. Like I do think it's 3-0 or 2-3. And it feels weird to say that about 2 teams at an event, but still. It is what it is.
It is what it is.
Right, I'm going to let you go and talk about Heroic, because you say Heroic have LAN issues here in the notes.
I
want to know exactly what you're talking about. Give me some details.
They are doing very well online this year. They qualified for IEM Dallas in a very convincing fashion against Astralis. Beat Metasport. They beat Big in such a series. They're doing fine. They've only lost 2 online series. They beat Liquid. They beat 3D Max, etc., etc. LAN in 2025, they have an understandable loss to Spirit, and then a very strong win against Liquid, and then it's kind of downhill from there. They lose to Saw here in EPL. They lose to Big on LAN. Absolute destruction in Katowice to knock them out. It's a close loss to Eternal Fire. And they're about to lose to 3D Max. They lost the first map convincingly, 5-13, their own map pick of Nuke. They're now on Train, and it's 5-9, and they're on T side. not overly hopeful for that one. And then they're down into the 1-2 pool, which, I mean, look, I still think they have a good chance of being in the 2-2 game, and then, you know, whatever happens, happens. But there's definitely something I think Heroic need to work out here, because there's a very stark contrast between online and LAN results at the moment, which is not unexpected, I don't think. I think Tenier and Youngster in particular are obviously not going to be as well versed on LAN. Even Linus is not going to be that well versed on LAN. We also saw this, like a tad of this last year. They didn't make the major through the RMR. They didn't make it deep as they probably could have done in the rest regional series, semi-final exit, I believe it was, when they were realistically the favorites to win the whole event. So, you know, it's starting to come to a point where, like, you have to fix this, I think. It's still going to be, even if they just make it to Austin and just attend, it's still going to be a pretty good season for them, and there's stuff to work on for the fall season. But here, as much as in the past few events as well, it seems like Heroic do have something they need to work out. And yeah, that's kind of the bottom line. And that's what I think a lot of people are talking about with this team at the moment, is that they have a very stark contrast between online and LAN results. It's not a huge amount of games. It's about 10 games each, but there's a pattern starting to form. And this EPL could still be, and if it isn't, you know, it's a little bit of a turning point maybe, where you start to wonder, if they go out here in the play-in, you start to wonder, is there a LAN issue? And then, you know, they rock up to Dallas, how are they going to do there? Not sure what to think, but we'll see. If they make it through, then, you know, good job. They can probably put up a decent performance in the main Swiss as well. But I'm cautiously wondering, you know, when is this trend going to swing?
Yeah, they start off the year with 2 LAN victories, and that's where we start getting our positive vibes from. You know, they beat 3Max, they beat Liquid. You're thinking,
that's online.
The Season 1 Last Bounty, that part.
The first 2 games were online. Only the Spirit game was online.
Oh, you're correct. Oh, well.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that just builds your narrative further. I mean, they play Spirit on LAN and play them fairly
with
well.
A stand-in, with Madden as well. Yeah.
Like, that was not the worst loss, but still. No, you're right. They have struggled to actually get the wins. I mean, they then go and beat Liquid in the plane of Kato on LAN, so whatever.
Yeah.
They're just better than Spirit. Oh, better than Liquid, sorry. But look, they have struggled in a lot of LANs. I do think there could be a problem, like, in terms of nerves, in terms of, you know, Linus. Maybe he struggles to make the right calls or get the right feel for the game on LAN. Xflower may be uncomfortable. I don't know. I'm just going to go look at the team stats. Like, who shifts the most between online and offline play? So if you just look at LAN results, Tenier actually gets slightly better. It's not a Tenier problem. Though, to be fair, he didn't play against Spirit, those 2 maps. But aside from that, yeah, everyone else just gets worse. Everyone else drops off a cliff pretty much. And Pius goes from being... I mean, the biggest drop is Xfloud. But I think one of the ones you wouldn't expect to go down that far is Pius, given that he's your, like, veteran presence as Europa, who's been around the block for a long time. Yeah, it could be a variety of issues.
Yeah, and, like, it's obviously also a question of how do things in TeamSpeak change when you're on LAN versus when you're at home. Even if Tenier doesn't get worse individually, you know, maybe he comes in a different way. Yeah. That's still, you know, something which definitely could happen. So,
yeah, 2 LAN series wins so far this year. One against Liquid, who they just are the daddies of, and one against Housebets, who are everyone's son. So, at least at this level.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, even Linvision are just stomped them. So, yeah.
I mean, even Linvision. I could have called that cut, like, before the event. The Linvision would stomp Housebets. That was a given.
I probably would have as well. But I wouldn't put Linvision to stomp many other teams in this bracket. So,
who's the other Australian team?
Yeah.
Mind Freak, that's the one.
Yeah, but my goat Gump, he plays there.
Gump.
Straight up gumping it in ESL Pro League.
Let's not make too many Father Wobby references right now. The show's still on the air. Let's not make that clip associated. As much as it might be one of the pinnacles of internet humor. Let's move on to a team I predicted would start well. I did not see performing this well. So M80, basically, coming into it, I knew they'd beat FlyQuest. I made the point on the double swing. It was my call. I was like, yeah, no, I don't see FlyQuest actually beating M80 because maybe I can give them the talent edge on the AWP front. Like, I think I personally love Regali, always will. I don't care what anyone says. I think he's a better AWPer than Slacks. Fight me. But on the rifle front, you're telling me I need an off-peak Ince who's just been trashed since Alistair left. Dexter, Liaz, and an all-over-the-shop Vexite to go up against a rifle core that has actually proven itself to be fairly competent at even Tier 1 level. Like, Lake has had strong Tier 1 performances in terms of against real teams. Swisher and Rek have been like pretty consistent across Tier 1.5 play. I mean, they do, I think, occasionally go missing at Tier 1, but they've been decent. And then Sin, as a caller and a fragger, has shown us a lot. Like, not only did I think he was the better caller in this matchup, I thought he might also contribute a lot more on the fragging. And overall, it worked out. The part that for me was a bit of a shock is how the series against Pain went down. The fact that they could beat Pain at LAN, not that shocking, because we've seen the floor fall out of Pain after a series of good results on a few occasions. It's not novel. But the fact that they've got stomped by M80 is the shock. Like, that is the problem. This is an M80 who, whilst they beat FlyQuest, as I predicted, it wasn't exactly an easy run-through, you know? 13-11, 13-8, a strong CT side on Dust 2, basically rescuing them, because they didn't look like they had much of a plan on Dust 2. I did think it'd have to go to Inferno if we didn't have that ridiculous CT side. On Inferno, they're usually pretty strong, so that's fair enough, but I was worried about that. And if you look at the series against Pain, it's just ridiculous. Like, Pain offered nothing in resistance to this M80 side. And Sin gets the run of the land. Lake as well. Didn't even need much out of Swisher or Rek. Just everything they tried worked out on the aggressive front, and then they end up with an easy victory. So it could be that M80 are just legit in terms of they have a great caller and a great rifle core, and that's going to help carry them through in this level event. Or it could just be they're benefiting off the opponents. Because I thought, matchup-wise, they have a great chance of beating FlyQuest outright, and then they play a Pain who massively underperform. Like, this is not the Pain we're expecting to see. Like, we're expecting something out of Big Uzera, something out of Davideus, something out of these players to actually challenge a team like M80, especially a team like M80's opening pack, like the aggressive core of that team. And sure, we get a good performance from Slacks, but I think the core reason why this goes the way it does is because of them, because of Sin, and because of Lake just getting away with murder. And I think, yeah, this is the new reality, and I think there's a good chance they go 3-0 today anyway, whether that matters or not. I do think M80 have benefited off good matchups and weak opponents. You know, the combination of the two. Like, just benefiting off their opponent's level and who they match up with, rather than necessarily being that convincingly 3-0 amongst this field.
Yep. M8's going to be interesting. I think I could see them going 3-0 for sure. Wait, who do they have today?
They have Saw, so I can definitely see them winning it. I think that's the bigger toss-up of the matchups in the 2-0 bracket, because I think Gamer Legion versus Tyloo should be convincing. Gamer Legion win.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the other one
I'm just going to I'm just going to mention last week we gave a lot of shit to Ince for being shit this year. And I'm just going to say he had 2 pretty good maps against M80, but it wasn't enough. He was not doing enough. And immediately into the series they win against Linvision, guess who's doing nothing? It's Ince. He's 11-13 and 9-7. Like, he's
yeah, Regali pops off. Vexite has a great series. Ince almost AFK. And I mean, the FlyQuest, yeah, you're right. Against M80, he does have a couple solid maps. Like, in terms of his overall play, like, it's better than what we've seen at a lot of games recently. But I don't know. I'm still saying their best player is Regali, and that shouldn't be so easily the case considering his break from top level competitive play. They needed ints.
Yeah, they do. And they don't have him, but MAT have Lake and they have Slacks and they have very solid players. And it's nice to see this. I think this is another result. Like again, in the context of the whole season, we're heading into in a month is the deadline for major status. They MAT honestly flying a bit under the radar, but more than most other teams got fucked over by the Valve regional standings by playing a single game in Blast Bounty with a European majority, and therefore they moved. Therefore, after that one game, they moved from the American to the European ranking, and they didn't get a single American invite, and they had to play open qualifiers to get back to the American thing. Like, we haven't seen MAT a lot this year. That's because they were in America but weren't getting invites to American events. That's why. So now they're back. Yeah, they're back. They're behind NRG. They're behind Blue Jays. They're behind Imperial. They're 10th in the Americas ranking at the moment.
God, that's rough.
Yeah, but a good result here at EPL probably puts them above NRG. Definitely puts them above Blue Jays, I would say. Imperial as well. I'm not quite sure about their recent results, but actually, yeah, they've had pretty good local results, and we'll see them in Lisbon as well. So, I mean, crucial for M80 to start getting some spots. Otherwise, they are going to have to play the MRQ. Probably, honestly, I probably will do anyway. But yeah, M80 have had problems getting to majors, and if it's the third time running, they don't make a major. Wow. But yeah, really solid event to start building back, and really important wins.
Yeah, we'll see. If they beat Saw, great. Season's back on, I think. It's essentially how that's going to feel.
Season's back on, yeah.
If they lose to Saw, I mean, I still see them going through, given how they've played so far and what I know about the roster, like, and the bits I like. But it's going to be interesting.
They beat Saw, welcome to Austin. If they lose to Saw, it's like, welcome to the MRQ. Yeah,
that's going to be rough. You know who else is 2-0? GamerLegit. And GamerLegit, I think, is for me the most point blank. Just they should be 2-0.
Yeah,
they are 2-0. Big deal. Nothing to say. Like, I know that some of the results have not been that convincing in terms of just, they beat NRG 2-1. You'd want to beat NRG by a much bigger margin if you're the European favorite. But still, they got the job done. They were able to put them away. That's kind of the problem. After you leave them, they pick train, they get a 10-2 T half. You kind of have to be a bit worried, The momentum is on their side. Hext is blowing you away. You're kind of worried. And then, they recover. They clutch it up. Good coach work. Take on MIBR. Beat them because MIBR have nothing really to present against solid teams right now. PR himself, man, what a player. He's so clean with it as well. Like, when you watch him play, a lot of players who get a lot of kills, it may not look as pretty as this. Like, he just does it in a very aesthetic way when he does get his frags in. So I've been enjoying watching them play. Still think they're one of the best coached, best led teams right now.
Yep.
Just a solid roster, a strong team. I still think we're missing. I'm gonna say this every time I watch them, but I still think we're seeing not seeing quite enough out of Slend. I want more. Please give me more. Like, please. Like, I get it. The focus of the team isn't you. Like, overall, like, they do kind of revolve around ZTR calling with PR and Res. Like, they're his main weapons. And that's why you see Slend have so few openings, like a lot of trading and clutching sort of profile stats. But I think we could see a little more out of him, just overall. And hopefully that comes through in the next series, or just overall in the next sort of month or so when they're playing EPL as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they have shown that they are a very solid team so far. I'm slowly being turned by a Towson, because he keeps looking so bad, like, in a lot of ways. But he does the job, he gets the job done, and he's such a vibe, like, he's such a vibe manager, to be honest. which is an actual job title I once heard when I went to a job fair. Sorry, I have to mention this. There was a software development company who I went to speak with somebody, and she said, "Oh yeah, I'm the vibe manager," and her entire job is like company culture, but they like to call it vibe. So yeah.
Yeah, that's not
Anyway.
that's not a new thing. There's been literally like I mean, the extreme version of this is like, I think it's some sort of Asian company, like a game dev company, who had like literal strippers or models walking around just to keep everyone's spirits up whilst they were grinding out stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not new that companies will have HR hires, essentially, who exist to be in the office and keep everyone from being cripplingly depressed. You know, whether that be throwing the pizza parties or, you know, supplying Adderall. I don't know what some companies need to get their jobs done, but that sounds like fun. But no,
Yeah.
it's not that new. And Towson, yeah, you're right. He does have a certain amount of just energy, charisma to the team. I mean, look at him. That's a jaw right there. That's a lead you into battle type build.
Yeah.
Like he's definitely there just to play his role very well, be the consummate soldier, and keep everyone's spirits up. And it's working in terms of no one cares that he's got a 0.95 rating because the team wins, and we get why he's got that rating. You know,
Yeah.
we see it.
Hell yeah.
We see it. He's cooking. It all makes sense. As much as he isn't, honestly, I thought he'd be traded more than he is, but that's maybe.
I thought that was the point of why he was here, and that's why I was surprised they cut Volt instead of 1000 to add res.
I mean,
or PR, honestly.
I think it's more of a, like, yeah, because if you look at his opening deaths traded percentage, when it's an intentionally set up death, it's been quite frequent at this event. And I think overall, if you ignore Pro League and just look at 2025, you're going to see more entrying than you have at Pro League. Yeah, it's just a little bit more. So I think it's more a statistical anomaly. He is there to play a role. He's done a good job so far. And GamerLegit have benefited, but mostly they benefit, I think, from having just a gem in PR. Again, those of you who've watched every episode of Prospects already fucking know. Got a full episode. It wasn't the best edited version. I was having an experimental phase with how can I make more Prospects? And the end result was a very long, very boring video, but it was there. It exists.
Yeah.
All right, let's wrap it up. Let's wrap it up on the play. And I think there's not many. I mean, unless someone in chat wants to, in all caps, just say, please talk about this team. I want to talk about NRG.
Yeah.
And I think they're coming for the NA podium, is essentially my view on it. Because it's not, I'm not saying they're going to be like an ultra competitive team internationally, but the level they've played at here has been fascinating. And now coming into the event, they had already, you know, they'd sort of started asserting their superiority over teams like Nouns and Boss, but they hadn't faced up at all with European competition. And the fact they take a map off GamerLegit, beat Nemiga outright 2-0, I think is impressive. And for certain players, it's sort of a redemption tour, redeeming arc that we get to see specifically out of George, a dominant map in EU. Because that was often the criticism of George, was that not necessarily EU, but against stronger opposition than the tier 2 NA play he has in, he can't really do what he does. Like, he's usually a bit of a bully, you know, some would say a flat track bully, but still very assertive, very dominant force. The first time we've seen him do it against a really strong team is this series against Nemiga, where he has a ridiculously productive Anubis, like 25-9, 110 ADR, like a huge series for him. That's the first time we've seen it. And I think the reason I say they're coming for the NA podium is that they've had these performances, this map win over one team, a series over another, without Bro carrying. Like, he's not doing everything for them. It's not a classic case of, oh, we imported a player, he's doing everything. He was pretty much running rampant, running wild in North America. Like, he had a really strong rating. Yeah. Overall, he just looked like he was smurfing. He's actually not doing that much on this team, and it's the other guys showing up. The player I highlighted pre-event as my pick, and a guy I've been talking about as like an NA talent for a while, just never gets taken very seriously, I think, due to being on Evil Geniuses. Hext T. He's been really strong at this event. He's finding key kills. He's contributing in a big way, and I think that's been important. But not just that. You know, as I said, Jaws showing up is nice. Nitro's calling a decent game. It's not crazy, but it's decent. And we're not getting a bot OC. So I think there's a number of things working in their favor. And it's a great start for them to start like really actually challenging for that NA podium. Because look, number one is still technically Liquid, right? I think we can all agree that Liquid are officially the best North American team, even if at this point they're barely North American, right?
Yep.
In fact, on the official HLTV leaderboard, they're no longer North American. But then it's Complexity. I'm not sure about you. I don't really believe in them very much. M80.
No.
Wildcard are in there somewhere, but they are, again, no longer on the North American HLTV ranking just because of their diversity.
Yeah.
It's an interesting situation where there's a few teams, even if we include the non-America's Majority teams, where I think they're in the conversation with M80 to go take that third place spot away from Cole that a lot of us don't believe in anymore, outright. I don't know about you. I think that team's pretty shit. Like, beyond JT, there's nothing much to hold on to, and even then, what are we talking about? Like, that's it. We want to cope and see that JT's a great IGL, and that's all we have to really hope for. Yeah, it's an awkward situation. I think this is NRG's chance to try and take that third place spot. It's going to be a war between them and M80. But yeah. They could even punch as high as second if we're counting Wildcard, because Wildcard is still technically second in North American if we count them as North American. So, wide open scene. That podium is going to be decided in the next 6 months. I think NRG have shown us they've got more to offer than just a few stomping wins over the likes of Boss and Nouns.
Yeah. Interesting thing. We were all talking about Furia taking the top America spot from Liquid. It's actually Pain who have gone past by quite a margin. They're number one on the American track. Yeah, they are very, very high up. Another complete side note, I think we're ready to move on from ESL Pro League. I don't have a lot to say about NRG. Just before we move into the rest, the invites for Bucharest were just announced, and there's a couple of teams skipping. Spirit, Vitality, and Navi are skipping this event as well, next to skipping Cluj-Napoca. Mouse have also skipped, despite winning Cluj-Napoca. But yeah, so G2 are still here, Mongols are here, FaZe are here, Liquid are here. I think there was another team who skipped last time as well. Yeah, GamerLegit. So, yeah, that's just an interesting side note that they changed the. This is the whole thing about how they've changed their revenue share, and now teams want to go back into the PGL circuit. But it's interesting that a couple are still skipping.
Is there something clashing? Is there something really close to it in the schedule?
No. Well, maybe. If it was, it would be strange that we had this many top teams even. But no, it's
it's from the 5th to the 18th. There's nothing really there that's big.
No, Blast Lisbon happens like 5 days before, and then IM Melbourne happens like 2 weeks afterwards, a week and a half afterwards.
This is weird. Like, look, we haven't seen Spirit play since the 9th of February at Katowice. We haven't seen Vitality play since the same day. We're going to see Vitality play.
We're going to see both of them in ECL Pro League
of March.
Yeah,
and then they won't play again until Blast Open Lisbon, and then they'll skip until IM Melbourne, which is a 3-week gap. Like, what on earth are this? I thought we'd get more top level gameplay from this circuit. Instead, a lot of top teams basically fucking me. Like, I thought I'd have loads to talk about in terms of top teams. I've had to pause the Power 10 because what the fuck am I supposed to do with half a fucking scene? Half the scene's not here in terms of the Power 10. Like, what am I supposed to be doing?
I think the point here is PGL did some stuff with the revenue share. So a lot of teams opted to skip Cluj-Napoca because they felt a break was more valuable than the orgs rather felt a break was more valuable than the.
Yeah, and some of them were absolutely wrong. Liquid.
Yeah, Liquid were very wrong. They have now lost the number 1 spot. We have a ranking update today, so that's very. I think tonight is going to be the next official invitation ranking update, which means Pain are number 1, and they're going to be number 1 until the cutoff for the major and MRQ. At which point. I mean, honestly, Liquid's best hope might be to beat Mongols.
I mean, Liquid are not even number 1 in Asia.
No, they're number 2. They're gonna be they're probably gonna be in stage 2 the way it's looking. But yeah. Anyway, that's a complete side note. Let's move on.
Yeah, let's get into the small site retakes, because we have a couple of topics here. We're going to start with yours, because I want to rest my voice.
Yep. There's been some politicizing happening in the world, and there has been
That's new. That's never happened. I'm going to be honest. That's a first. Politics in Counter-Strike.
Yeah.
I don't believe so.
It's not even. It's not directly Counter-Strike related. Even it is sports in general.
Yeah, obviously we're talking about it because it has touched Counter-Strike, obviously.
The US has a blanket ban on visas for trans athletes competing in the US. Look, the legislation here is dense, but if you want, this is just a quick way to say that if you want to know more about this and how this might potentially affect esports, is that ESL Impact has their finals at the end of May in IEM Dallas, and they could be impacted. They could be affected by this since several teams have trans players, and it's kind of bullshit that this rule would even apply. The whole the motivation behind the visa ban is that trans athletes have their safety risks associated with competing with cisgendered competitors because of differences in physicality. Esports is not a contact sport. There's no
very
safety
few
risks.
are.
Yeah. So although chess, like Counter-Strike boxing, like chess boxing, that would be quite something. You play a couple of rounds of 1v1,
blame F,
and then some
goat.
boxing. Sorry, that's a complete side note. If you want to know more about this,
probably not. There's probably some Russian player who's like come through like actually boxing, and he doesn't look like an athlete, but will just beat the shit out of him because he's just a big dude. I don't know if he has any fighting training, so that might be a complete misrepresentation of his abilities. But anyway, yes.
Pasha would love it. Pasha biceps. He already does fighting, like he does wrestling or something or other, right?
He did
MMA
some mixed martial arts stuff, and it was. I mean, he's more trained than pretty much every pro combined, as far as I'm aware. It's just, let's be honest, it was something of a we're both muscles. Fight. It was something.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say you should go read 2 articles that Dust to US. They were published February 27th, so that would be Thursday. It is a regular article about the news event and then an opinion piece, both of them written by DoktorWaldo, Dust to US writer, and I'm gonna include his full title: Board Certified Family Medicine Physician, current Sports Medicine Fellow at Southern Illinois University. This guy knows his shit, and you should read these articles if you want to know, because I'm not entirely certain that it's actually going to affect ESL Impact, because we briefly spoke about this pre-show. You might be able to circumvent this by just going, I'm not going to a sports event, and then you go to the sports event. I don't know if that's possible. It's possible this would affect things. I think ESL Impact should move the event. I think that's just the most clear solution, but that's me personally, and I've never worked for a TO, so I don't know exactly how difficult that would be. Yeah,
probably very difficult.
Probably very difficult, but also a fix. So yeah, it's very interesting. There's a lot of discussion in these articles about why this visa ban doesn't actually apply to esports. There's a lot of discussion around. It created a lot of discussion around trans players participating in ESL Impact in the first place, which is a whole different story, which is very contentious and very, a lot of people have differing opinions on this. But just gonna say, read those 2 articles because they're very well written, and it's dense, but it's very clear. It's very clear.
It's the kind of article where I, as an fairly educated English first language speaker person, had to sit down and go, okay, I should have to focus to figure out what's being written here, because it's not optimally written for the average Counter-Strike newsreader. Let's put it that way. It is fairly dense, and it is interesting, and it's a problem that we can hope simply won't affect the Impact League, in the sense of a reasonable exception could already have been made to this sort of ban, just because it is an esport, not a sport. The main point of contention, obviously, being a safety issue, will not apply at all. There is zero contact. It's not even like we can say we're a fake contact sport like modern football, which is just ballerinas eventually kicking a ball. Not even that problem. Like, there's not even fake contact. It's completely pointless to talk about contact in Counter-Strike. So we just hope there's a reasonable exception already made. If there isn't, we hope then next step, none of the trans players actually make it. Because that would just avoid the problem.
Also possible. There aren't a huge amount.
There's only a couple, as far as you told me. So there's only a couple that really come up.
In Europe, at least, there's an interesting thing, which is that there is a bunch in the North American League, I think.
Yes, which they don't need a visa.
I'm not sure they do, because they aren't actually American, most of them. There's
Canadian?
only... No, some of them maybe are. Some of them are Canadian. Some of them are like Eastern European. I think there's a couple who are Australian.
Are they already in the country?
I don't know. Maybe they're in Canada. Like maybe they're based in Canada and not in the US.
But yeah, the final circumventing, as some people would say, is just, I'm here as a tourist. Go play Impact.
Yeah, assuming I don't know if that works. Worst case scenario, the border authorities shows up at IEM Dallas and deports them live on the spot.
That won't happen. But the worst case scenario, realistically, that could happen is some sort of withheld prize money, a sort of potentially actually consequences for future visas, which is why you'd want to not do it. So there is a lot to consider, and it's an awkward scenario to the players to be put in. I just hope that there's a common sense exception for something that is so clearly not a contact sport and falls outside of the remit of what should be the spirit of this executive order. Should be.
Yeah.
The actual spirit of it, probably very different. But that's a more complicated conversation that we're not going to get into on our fun little Counter-Strike.
On our Counter-Strike podcast. Yeah.
The actual socio-political state of the world is not under question here. We want to talk about shooty, shooty, bang, bang. The fake kind. Right. So no, I do recommend that people should read them. They are, again, I said dense. If English isn't your first language, maybe get an AI thing to summarize it, because it's going to be rough to read. Like, it's just a lot.
There's I don't know if this is intentional with the different codes and of stuff. But yeah, it's the EO 14201 sections 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 9 of the IOC document. That's like a legal document. That's gonna be dense.
Yeah, if you want to get a full understanding, if you do have no problems reading and understanding English, read everything he links in there, because he does, I believe, link the IOC docs and the original executive order and certain studies that he uses to address certain points. I would go read it all. It is more interesting than I think we make it sound. So, yeah, check it out. We just hope it doesn't become an issue. Right. For me, I want to talk briefly about a Counter-Strike event. You know, this is a Counter-Strike show. That we didn't address, obviously, in the main body of the episode, because it's not as important as EPL, no offense. But it's the MESA, not America, the MESA Asian Masters, which is also a direct qualifier for PGL Bucharest 2025, whilst being an Asian LAN in Ulaanbaatar. At this event, Raratum, Atox, Semperfi, Chinggis Warriors, GGAHO, Talon, Dog Evil, and Only One Word. Now, I have a couple notes, a couple things to bring up for a number of these teams. First one being a very confusing question is, who the hell is Talent's AWPer going to be?
According to Wikipedia, Sterling and Malta played the Oceanic qualifier.
Sterling is now listed on HLTV, so maybe that's been resolved. But
Malta instead of Azure, according to this.
Instead of Hazard?
Played the qualifier, yeah. Instead of, Azure, not Hazard.
Oh no, it's there, it's updated as well. Yeah. Okay. Right, this is going to be a very weird Talon roster. Sorry, yeah, it's not fully updated. So they will have Sterling.
Okay. Malta is a throwback. I got whiplash from seeing that. Being thrown back to 2021 Renegades.
This is awful. But yeah, there's a couple teams here that are a little weird. But I do have, like, for me, my primary point of interest is Semperfi. And now for two reasons. Firstly, why are you all so hot? Stop it. This is weird. Just look at those pictures. I guess there's also the lighting's good, they're well posed, but every single one of them, lean, nice jawline, sharp, some of them with pretty high cheekbones and well-structured face. Like, why are you all so hot? Stop it. But secondly, also, this is a big chance to prove yourselves. I have heard a lot of talk about how good Shady is. I mean, Keen ran away from Europe to be in this team and has put up ridiculous numbers. I didn't have too much to say about him when he was in Europe. Like, I didn't think that much of him. No offense to the lad. But he was like, a 1.0 rated AWPer, just consistently. Like, him and Shield, both Latvian, both had the same energy to me. Like, doesn't do that much on the server, doesn't move me. I need to see a lot more before I'd actually start talking about them as a prospect. And at 24, he's well outside that range for me. But yeah, I was also told Shady was just a very complete player. Did a lot of things very well. Is a player to be following, to be interested in. And to be honest, I've seen a bit of the Gucci Academy team he was on. Wasn't overly excited about him. Like, he wasn't bad by any means, but he wasn't something special. So I'm interested because they've now been in Oceania for a little bit. No, sorry, I'm not sure exactly how long these two specifically have been competing out there. July 2024. Okay, a decent amount of time.
Decent amount.
And they've been on a pretty strong run of late. They defeated the 2 EPL qualifiers out of Australia, Housebets and Mindfreak, in the EPL World Series Oceania, which doesn't get you much except prize money. I thought it might be in qualify for something, but it's just money. And they've been on a very strong win streak. They've got a great win rate in the last 3 months overall. I think this is a great opportunity for them to prove themselves. It's a cool event, some interesting teams, but also some weaker teams. The best teams in attendance, Reratum and Atox, beatable. If you are, the talents I think a lot of people have claimed you are, and these wins online have been legit, those are winnable games. It's going to take a good performance out of you, but they're winnable games. And then the talk about the teams lower ranked than them, GG Howard are always a bit of a mess. Talon have just gotten worse. Dog Evil and Only One Word, absolute nobodies. So for me, this is a great opportunity for Semper Fi to go out and show off, basically. Like, Savage is a player we should have been talking about for a while as an up-and-coming Australian. He's now got a team with a couple of European imports who should be rather strong. I want to see them perform, and that's kind of me laying down the gauntlet. Like, come here, win this event, and I might care about your scene again. Like, just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. Just that tad bit more.
Yeah. It's a fun event as well. We have GG How in attendance. It's going to be fun to see Boros and Bibu and Mini. That's a nice little
Boros
trio
back to carrying the Middle East scene. Love to see it.
Boros, Bibu, and Mini, quite a neat little trio of pretty hopeful Middle Eastern players. But also, it's a little bit of a shame we didn't get Al Ittihad going through because Osama's back on LAN. They fell in the final, but yeah. And this only one word team came through, which is Freeman, previously of Tyloo. And they got through beating KZG, who I think decent Oceanic opposition. Whatever. Actually, no, they had a pretty fraudulent run, actually. They didn't play a single good team. Never mind. But yeah. And then Atox, Rare Atom, solid teams. It's going to be fun to see how they stack up against some of this other opposition. Sorry, Chinggis Warriors. I'm just going to see who they beat to make it here. They got through. They got through on a default against Hotu on a forfeit. All right, yeah, fair. Anyway, it's going to be a fun event. It's kind of weird to have a close qualifier, which is a LAN, when the other close qualifiers are online. But
yeah,
I'd rather have that than an online qualifier. It's just a shame. I don't think
it does legitimize this specific qualifier a bit, doesn't it? Like, as much as it does, if you're one of the teams that struggles on LAN, you're forced to go play a LAN quali when someone else gets to play online, you would feel a bit hard done by. If you're a younger team, maybe even this could be a rough thing for Semper Fi to have to go play at LAN for this chance to qualify for Bucharest. But it's definitely a bonus for them if they do go and win it, because you've beat all these teams at LAN. You're now going to come play at Bucharest. Show us you're more than just like a modeling agency's side gig. Like, that'd be really fun.
It's a little bit of a shame there's no prize money attached. There's nothing to gain for you to gain other than the prestige if you make second place. And if you win a couple of $1,000 and you get to go to Bucharest. But yeah, a little bit of a shame that there's no consolation prizes, because that could have helped a lot. It's one of the few ranked events with open qualifiers in Asia. So it would have been very helpful for whichever teams end up being second place, no matter who they are. They definitely could have used that to rise in the Valve ranking. It would have been useful. But yeah, let's hope we get a nice event with some cool winners.
Yeah, that's essentially it. We'll see them at Bucharest, whoever wins.
Hell yeah.
The Eternal Shuffle. We now have more answers to some of these, but we start with GG How. We just said Boris is there. He replaced Issa.
Yep.
For me, that's just a slam dunk because I don't rate Issa. Never did, particularly. And I'm happy to see Boris playing again. As much as he is... No, we've had this conversation. We did do this last week. We weren't sure if we had done this one. I think we have. I'm feeling like I felt something coming. I was like, I've said that before on this show. So I think we can skip that one.
Yeah, I think good transfer. Let's see how Boris hangs, because he's had a bit of an up and down career.
Yeah, Talon cutting MHL and Azza, replacing them with Sterling and Malta. This can't be an upgrade. It just can't. I'm sorry. No offense, Sterling. This just can't be an upgrade. So Talon officially dead.
Yeah. If it is Malta and Azure, I don't know if that hasn't been announced. MHL's benching has been announced, and they've played with Sterling, so I'm assuming that's a change. Very much seems like a downgrade. If you were going to go for Sterling, you might as well have gone for Alistair. It's kind of how I feel. So, yeah.
Yeah, nothing much more to add.
No.
Right. Next one. I'm going to let you just talk through this. Let Her Cook have added Gencon and Spike.
Yeah, it wasn't announced, but they are playing Impact. Gencon being back is nice. She's a solid player, and she left the NIP Impact to take... I think she did it just to take a break. To, like, temporarily be like, I'm going to chill out in CS. But she's back with Let Her Cook. And a solid addition. Gencon has always been a bit of a very solid filler kind of player. Bit of a role player, perhaps. Spike, I don't have a read on. I don't think she's ever really stood out anywhere. She was on Astralis for a while, and that was about it. But Let Her Cook are a solid team, and they needed pieces because they lost. There was somebody, Rachel and Hikomi, both went on to greener pastures after last season. Or Raquel is on a better team now.
No, that's not how you say it. No.
Is it not Raquel?
No. It's
Rachel. Rachel, okay. Yeah, she actually Prototype Blaze. Orgless, apparently. I've also found out. They just have a strong brand on Twitter. Because they had a strong enough brand where I was like, oh nice, they got picked up by an org. That's good for them. And then I found out they're actually orgless. So I go pick them up. They're a good team. No, Let Her Cook. They played in an Impact final. They are pretty good.
Well, they were.
So they were. They can be again. And let's see how they do. They have Imperial in the same group and Prototype Blaze.
Yeah, that's stuff. I don't honestly. I don't really rate the roster. Like these additions, they're filler players, but they don't fill the shoes of who's left, like who left them. And they're going to struggle.
That's fair. That's fair.
They are going to struggle.
Yeah, Hikomi obviously very excited for that Akuma team with her and Letty and Shia and Yelka. Yeah.
Yeah, that's rough. But look,
that's rough.
They need 2 more players. At least they're in Impact. That's a good start.
Yep.
Yeah. Don't want to be too negative, but I am.
I mean, solid chance of making it's between them and Spray and Prey to make 3rd place, I think. Or sorry, Spray and Slay.
I think they could lose to DMS.
They could. That's the next game.
The CS2 news ladies aren't bad either, so I'm not feeling that good.
I think they're decent contender to make 3rd, and then it's a play-in, and they're probably playing. I want to say they're playing maybe Akuma, or maybe Big Akipa. So yeah, see what happens.
Interesting. Flamengo have picked up what was Tropa de VSM, Brazilian team. We are at the bottom of the barrel here.
Yeah,
I have
we are,
not much
indeed.
to say positive about this roster because they don't play much outside of Brazil. So cool, good for them. They got onto the football team org. Now time to win some matches, please.
They added
Play in
Danako
EU
as well. Yeah. Yeah. It's Max. Sorry, I'm just reading it. VSM is the one guy you know. Danako, if you watch Tier 2 Brazilian CS. And then there's a player called Max. It's not 9Z Max. It's an academy player from Furia. I just put it in because it's VSM, and I think you mentioned Tropa de Taco in one of the previous episodes.
Yeah, I might have done at some point. Just when talking about that kid.
Mm-hmm.
What was his name?
Oh.
The little baby.
I don't know. Taco, Tropa de Taco.
Why can't I filter the players?
Jeesus.
Was it Jeesus?
He was on Tropa de Taco.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the kid. The kid. I'm not saying... I think the kid played against them. I didn't say he was on them.
GTW, I think his name is.
Yeah, that's the one. Like 12-year-old, 14, Red Canids Academy.
Yeah, 14,
one. Yeah, but anyway. That's pretty much the Eternal Shuffle. There's not much shuffling going on.
Yeah.
Not much shuffling going on.
I think... there's nothing else.
There is.
If you wanted to hear somebody talk about Heymo dropping their team, this is not the podcast. It would be the podcast for that, but not, not even us.
Not even us. Even we do not give a shit about Heymo dropping their team.
Yep.
But all right, the final segment of every show, prospect of the week. Quacke, do you have someone new to talk about?
No, it's Melo9 again. He has had. I've had the option of picking him as a prospect for this is the third week straight, and that's impressive. He's had a really solid run the past couple of days and weeks. And once again, they have a really good time this week. They won European Pro League second division. That was I think they beat Preezy to make that win. Bit of a thump, honestly, from Melo9. And they've also played in United 21, where I think they got knocked out. Yeah, they had a loss there against Leo, but that happens. And then they're back in European Pro League. We're back to the mid, even without the CCT ban and all of this stuff. We are back to playing this tier of events if we're Johnny Speeds, and that's a shame. But for Melo9, this is still a step up from where he was before, and doing this well here is really good. He is maybe the spiritual successor to Spook on this team, which is really nice to see. I mean, he's top of his squad. It's him. He's just really solid. They've even played without Draken for sections of this week. So maybe not actually. Yeah. No wait. Yeah, I think they have. They played with Vallen instead, which was a bit random.
But no, I did a prospect demo. Members would have seen it off for Melo9 last week. I mean, he's just clean. Like, I called him Rox 2.0 was the reference I made, because he's just very controlled, very stable in his everything he does. I've had a few worries, like maybe he's not going to be that explosive, like in terms of the adjustments he can make if he's caught off guard. But the problem is he's just very rarely caught off guard. He's very prepared for everything, very meticulous. And honestly, when he's ready for something, he's going to hit the shot, seemingly time and time again. A trade-heavy player and a clutching sort of player, closing player, but a very strong one, and one who's so fun to watch in terms of the aesthetic, just control.
Oh, yeah. And like going from playing ESEA main and doing good there with Godsent, stepping up into this tier of play. It's a lower tier of play, but I think this is the bulk of his HLTV games already. He's 15 years old. He's turning 16, and at that point, you can start talking about playing bigger events. Because I think a lot of events still have the 16-year-old limit, unfortunately. It doesn't get mentioned as much anymore. But CCT, for example, even if they were ranked highly enough for them to make that invite, because they aren't ranked at the moment, they would have difficulty doing it, and I think that blocks them from playing certain open qualifiers as well. But later this year, that's going to be go time for that. Yeah, let's go Johnny Speeds. Let's go Male 09.
Yeah, solid fucking player. Finally,
Hell
a
yeah.
Swedish talent who might actually bridge the gap without being IGL. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
All right, my prospect is a player who gets overlooked on his team, honestly, historically, understandably, but more recently has been doing a great job, and that is Demon of Na'Vi Jr. He's basically, it seems to have taken up the main focus of that like counterpunch that the team has. He's doing a lot of trading, clutching out really well in the last week as well. He's always been on that sort of late round section of the team, but I think this week they've had a few struggles, I think, with Makaze. I mean, aside from the Spirit Academy grudge match, Makaze's had a pretty weak 2025, I think. And they've needed more out of the rest of the team. And bloody hell, in the last week, Demon's shown them a lot. He's come out and swinging.
Yeah.
Really great fragging. Something he's had, he's got it in the vault, but he doesn't show it too often. He's still only 17. And yeah, he had a banger week. Thought I might as well select him whilst he's up here. Look, he's not going to have many weeks like this, I don't think. I think he's going to be a role player as he makes his way up through the scene. Won't be the number one guy on this roster very often, but they needed someone to close, someone to clutch, and they still managed to win those games, so it was successful. It's just a different style than they're used to having. And so, yeah, Demon, congratulations. Prospect of the week for the first time, I believe.
Oh, he might be. He might actually be. Because we've always picked the others. Makaze.
Honestly, it's been Makaze almost always from Na'Vi Junior.
Yeah.
When we have had a Na'Vi Junior player.
Yeah, I think maybe we've mentioned Krabini or Smitri. But yeah, it's going to be Makaze. Nice job, Demon. He's been there for a good while. He's only 17, but I remember that he was one of the people who got signed.
Was he Na'Vi Youth? Yeah, he wasn't Na'Vi Youth. 2021,
they signed him when he was 13 years old. It wasn't even Na'Vi Youth. I think they literally just signed him to the team, and they were like, "We're gonna like personally coach you and then put you on a team." Because that was the time. Yeah, this was Navi's entire academy setup was Bit, Monesi, Onkir, Fear, Pogorelov, Cynics, Headtrick, and Demon.
Well, everyone was under one banner, basically.
Yeah, it was just like, we have these academy players. Same thing as Spirit signing that 9-year-old or whatever. Just, you want to sign them on so you have the talent. And you can do something with them. You can work with them until they can play. Yeah. Nice that it's nice that development's actually played off.
Yeah. Solid little player.
Solid little player.
When we talk about these academies like Spirit, Na'Vi, we often overlook the names that aren't the big names. And sure, I was about to do an entire tweet where I was like, 2025, 1-0 Makaze, because Makaze beat Kyosuke, he beat him in the head-to-head like 14-11. I was like, damn, look, see? The grudge match continues, but it's like overlooking all the other pieces that make these teams actually competent and competitive at this level.
Yep.
So, shout out Demon. Solid week. Prospect of the week. All right. That's the show. If you're watching it live, thanks for watching. And well, none of you said anything, so thanks for lurking, I guess, is the official term. Yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, just a normal episode for you. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Leave a comment telling us your thoughts on any of these topics, any of these teams we've mentioned, players, whatever. Sub if you want more, and also become a member if you want access to a bunch of extra content, as well as, obviously, the privilege of voting, privilege of asking questions on the Q&A, etc., etc., etc. But all right, that's all for this week. We'll see you next Monday. Goodbye.